Okay, here's the answer. Let's see if we can get the answer to how they're the same. Somebody tell me something that's common to all human societies.
Wanting to be in the movies.
Wanting to be in the movies, no. Not those people in Pitcairn Island. What's common?
What's
common to the structure of all human societies? What do we find in every human society? Go ahead.
Respect for elders.
Well, we have certain classes, right? Not all human societies have respect for elders. If you look at a society, how is it built?
We're born, we live, we die.
On principles.
Okay, there are rules and laws in all human society. That's right, principles. Rules, laws in all human societies. And there are people in all human societies. In every human society, we have to ask ourselves, what is my relationship to those principles, or Kohlberg calls norms and laws? What's my relationship to other people? Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going there, it's okay.
What's my relationship to other people? Under what conditions should I follow the rules? And what should I not? And why should or should I not follow the rules? What's my obligation to other people as they relate to the rules? Is there ever a time when I say the heck with the rules? A couple of times, right? When I'm at the very lowest and very highest levels of moral development. So all of this, says Kohlberg, is common to all human societies. Now the rules are different, the laws are different, the norms are different, but that never changes. So just as to learn the principles of a ball fall, of something falling, some kid can see an icicle fall and some kid can see a banana fall, but it doesn't matter. It's the falling. That's what Kohlberg says. So in every case, we are trying to make sense of our social norms and societies, and eventually Kohlberg's work expanded. Hans Firth did work on people's understanding of economics, people's understanding of groups, Selman. Levenger eventually did a more expansive theory called ego development, which was basically an understanding of not just morality, but of all aspects of society. Okay? So here, first let me show you. We had a little computer trouble, so I was using an older... okay, so let's go back to... first slide. There's Kohlberg. He was one of my teachers. That's how I knew him, as I said. And what he did is pose moral dilemmas to his subjects, and then he asked questions to probe their reasoning for recommending a specific course of action. And here... Whoops. Wait a second. Whoops. Let me go back here. Here we go. His most famous... Oh, my God. Oh, God. I got a computer problem here. His most famous dilemma... I'm having to turn off the computer. Is called the Heinz dilemma. And this Heinz dilemma is a dilemma about a man. I'll show it to you in a second when the computer comes back. It's a dilemma about a man whose wife is dying from cancer. And there's a drug that in some cases a scientist or a pharmacist has discovered and wants money for the drug, $4,000. And Heinz can't raise the $4,000. So I'm going to be playing with my computer. This is going to be a good film. We had 1 million troubles this semester. Okay? So what he does is that he can only raise 2 when he goes to the guy and says, hey, please, will you let me have the drug for this? I'll pay. And the guy says, no, I'm not going to do it. I worked on the drug. It's my drug. I'm not going to sell it to you. So there's a whole question of what should Heinz do? He considers stealing the drug. What should he do? Can you see the computer there now, you guys? Do you have it? It's okay? Okay. So here, in 1 second, I'll show you the dilemma, and I'll show you the various sets of questions that come up in which Kohlberg attempts to probe reasoning and see at what stage people are. Okay? And this is just one of them. It's the most famous one, and it's also the one on which he's done the most work on actually gathering people's level of moral development. Here we go back, and let's pray that this doesn't happen again. Okay. Here's the dilemma. I'll show it to you, and I'll show you some of the questions that have been asked. Okay, here's the dilemma. Okay, a woman is near death from cancer, you see, and Heinz can't raise the money. Okay, it's $4,000, and Heinz only has $2,000, and he asks the scientist to discover the drug for a discount. We'll let him pay later, but the scientist refuses. And so the question is, should Heinz break into the laboratory to steal the drug for his wife? Why or why not? And once again, come back to me for a second. The crucial question is why or why not. I heard one kid say, hey, he's got to steal the drug. I said, why? He said, if she dies, who's going to wash his clothes? Who's going to clean the floor for him? Who's going to cook his... That kid was 9, right? So, you know, that kind of thing. Okay, let's go back to the PowerPoint. Then he keeps the story going. Heinz did steal the drug. And the next day, you know, it's in the newspapers, and a cop named Brown remembered seeing Heinz, and he running away. So the question is, should Officer Brown report what he saw? And by the way, Officer Brown knows the problem. He knows that he stole it not to make a buck because his wife is dying. Okay? Then we find out that it reported him. Heinz was arrested and gone for court and was found guilty. Should the judge sentence Heinz to prison? Why or why not? Okay? Okay, so these are the kinds of things that he's interested in. Come back to me. The best thing that I like to hear is when a person can say, well, I can think of reasons why he should steal the drug or shouldn't steal the drug. I can think of reasons why the policeman should turn him in and not turn him in. Oh, that's what I want to hear. Tell me all the reasons you think he should steal it. Tell me all your reasoning why you think he shouldn't steal it. Because I can get more reasoning that way. Whenever a person says, well, I'm conflicted, I can think of reasons on both sides. I say, tell me all of them. Because I'm trying to get at reasoning. And some people say, well, he should steal the drug because his wife needs him. He needs his wife. But if he gets caught, he'll go to jail. So that's kind of the same level of reasoning. What's in it for Heinz? Other people talk about personal needs and personal morality versus society. Other people talk about the drug as being immoral, but what about society and the nature of society? And I mean, it can get complex. Okay, so let me show you now how Kohlberg conceives of his theory. Let's go back to the PowerPoint.
What about pharmacists?
Push it down.
What about pharmacists?
What about, say it again, what about the pharmacist?
What about the pharmacist?
Okay. Okay, come back to me. There's no charge for English lessons, by the way. He knows that, so we're okay. Well, that's a good question, right? In the talk of the discussion, you will often have people do just what you did. See, if you would say that to me, well, what about the pharmacist? I would say, well, what do you mean? And then I could get more of your reasoning. Tell me, what about the pharmacist? What do you think about the pharmacist?
Why he cannot sell for less money?
Do you think he should?
Sure.
Well, keep your finger on there.
Of course.
Why?
To help people.
Okay, you see, this could go on, and even though it's a question that was not on there, by asking this kind of stuff, I'm getting sent into his reasoning. I already know that he's not at the lowest level of reasoning from this, right? Okay, you understand what I'm saying? So even if somebody says, hey, what about the pharmacist? Good, I want to hear that. Because now I can get his reasoning from the other side of this. You understand what I'm saying? It doesn't matter what people say. I'm looking for their reasoning. Okay? So it's a good question. And that's what I want to get at. Let's go back to the PowerPoint now, and I'll show you how he conceives of his theory. He conceives his theory as parallel to Piaget's, okay? Before we start this, come back to me, I forgot I have to tell you something. Piaget wrote in French. And there are different translations of Piaget's theory. Most people translated what Piaget called sensory motor concrete operational, formal operational, as stage. And then they said within the stages there can be sub-stages. Remember we talked briefly about the 6 sub-stages in sensory motor stage. We talked about that briefly. Sub-stages. Also, we didn't talk about it because it's a little too complex for this level. There are 2 sub-stages in formal operations. But some people didn't do it that way. They translated it as level. Sensory motor, concrete operational, formal operational level with stages in each level. You understand? So one will say there's a sensory motor level, sensory motor stage with 6 substages. The other will say there's a sensory motor level with 6 stages. A little confusing, right? So most people use stage and substage. That's what I was taught, and that's how I did it. But whoever taught Kohlberg Piaget did it the other way around. Stage and level. Level and stage. So Kohlberg would tell you Piaget has, I'm talking about 3 levels in Piaget rather than 3 stages. And he says, I have 3 levels of moral development with 2 stages in each level. If he had asked me, and I knew him, but he didn't ask me, I would have said, why don't you say you have 3 stages and 2 substages in each one? But can't do that. First of all, he wrote it. He didn't listen to me. Besides, he wrote it in English, so I can't play around with it, right? So I'd say he was an American, so that's it. So he's going to show a parallelism between his theory and Piaget's theory. So let's go back to the PowerPoint, and I'll show it to you. Okay? He said, what the heck? That Piaget had a pre-operational, move it over, can you move it over a little? Oh, you can see it, a pre-operational level, thanks. And he says, I found a parallel level in the moral domain that I call pre-conventional reasoning. This is pre-operational reasoning applied to moral problems, or the moral domain, or moral solution. He said, within that I found 2 stages. Likewise, paralleling Piaget's concrete operational level, he called it a level, okay, there's conventional reasoning, which is concrete operational reasoning applied to moral problems or moral questions. And within that one I found 2 stages. And likewise, within formal operations, I found a parallel to Piaget, to Piaget called post-conventional reasoning, which is formal operational reasoning applied to moral problems. And I found 2 stages in there. He also talked about a 7th stage. We'll see if we get to it. He died just as he was talking about it. So, okay, so come back to me. So what Kohlberg is going to say is that, oh, I've got it here. Never mind. Come back to the PowerPoint. He's going to say that I lost it again. There's something wrong with my computer. He's going to say that each Piagetian stage is a necessary but not sufficient condition for the my parallel stage. You understand what I'm saying? People know what the idea of a necessary but not sufficient condition means? Tell me something that's a necessary but not sufficient condition. It's an important concept in science. A necessary but not sufficient condition. Go ahead.
Okay, like a simple example would be we all need water, but we also need food.
Right. So water is a necessary but not sufficient condition for human life. Do you understand? You have to have it, but it's not enough. So Kohlberg's going to say the Piaget stage is a necessary but not sufficient condition. So he'll say, in order, for instance, to be conventional, you have to be concrete operational. But that's not enough. You'll find plenty of people you'll find plenty of people who are concrete operational, but they're still not, they're still stuck at the pre-conventional level of moral development. As a matter of fact, he says that this is a common occurrence. This is a common occurrence. Most people in our society are formal operational in Piaget stages, at least for most of the things with which they interact, but they're concrete operational, or this guy, in his case, what he calls conventional, for, this has been a thrilling semester, a ton of mistakes. This tape is going to be played for 5 years, something like that. But they're conventional for moral reasoning. Okay, let's go back to the PowerPoint we all saw. Can you guys see it? You all set? No. Okay. Okay, wait a second. Okay, so it's a necessary but not sufficient condition. So, you're going to switch computers?
Save this onto here, and then if it goes down again. Then
Okay, we're trying all kinds of weird stuff. So, that guy screwed up my computer, didn't he? Huh? Why does he? Okay, so for instance, he'll say the modal level is to be formal operational, but be conventional. Most adults in our society are formal operational but conventional. And there are adults who are formal operational and pre-conventional. When those people come, run like hell. They have no morals, they don't care about anybody but themselves, and they're very smart. Get away. But you'll never have anybody who's pre-operational and conventional. First comes Piaget stages, then mine. Okay, so let's talk about these stages. Okay, pre-conventional reasoning. Okay, come back to me. Want me to save it onto there? I don't know how to do it. Okay, here's pre-conventional reasoning. Okay, oh, there we go. I don't know what the hell's going on. Okay, pre-conventional reasoning. Let's think about this. By the way, this is for as long as this film runs, machines hate me. It's personal. Okay, a machine, it hates me. Television hates me, computer hates me. They all hate me. The radio in my car hates me. They hate me. My car itself hates me. All right. Now, tell me something about concrete, pre-operational reasoners from Piaget's perspective. How do they see the world? Everything's from what perspective? Say it. Say it. Yeah. Me, from my own perspective. So if you take that and apply it to moral reasoning, what does that come out to? What's moral is what's good for me, right? Can you imagine a person who can think like a rational adult and who says, I'm going through life not caring about anything but what's good for me? Oh boy. When you see those people, run. When they send you email messages, oh, my grandfather is a judge in a noted African country and I have $60 million. Anybody get those emails? Just please, and I'm going to give you 10% if you help me move it out of the country, right? Just give me your bank account so I can transfer it and then you'll give me the... Whew. Okay? Okay, so let's go back to pre-conventional reasoning. Okay? Pre-conventional moral reasoning, let's go back to PowerPoint. There's no ability to take the perspective of another because it's concrete on pre-operational. Okay? What's moral is what's good for me. Let me show you something. Follow me. I'm sitting here. I'm drawn here. You got me here? I'm drawn. Doing my picture. All of a sudden, I need a blue pen. Give me, it's mine! Anybody work with little kids? You've seen that. Okay? That's what's good for me. It's cute when the kid's 23. When the kid's 33, he's got a gun and says, gimme, it's mine! It's not so cute. Right? It's not so cute. Okay? People at this level, this is the lowest, Okay, so at stage 1, which is the lowest level of this kind of reasoning, I do that which brings rewards or pleasures. I avoid that which brings punishment and pain. I lost it again. And it's powerful others that make a difference to me. Bring your computer, okay? We'll do it on your computer.
Yeah, you have to reboot it and save it, and then we'll move it over to this one.
Why? It's on that one already.
It already is?
Yeah.
Well, that was a problem earlier.
It's good enough. Okay? We're going to move it in computer, okay? Okay, who does this sound like? I respond to powerful others. I do what gives me pain, and I avoid what gives me pleasure. Who does that sound just like?
Saddam Hussein.
Who does that sound? What psychologist is that?
Skinner.
Skinner. It's not Freud, because Freud people, Skinner. Because Freud, that's mine, right? This is really annoying to me. Because Freud, people, if they feel they need to be punished, if they have an overactive superego, they'll do things that bring them pain. Okay, it's Skinner. You'll notice.
Function F8.
What?
Function F8 on it.
No, I got it. Okay, function F8. This is wonderful. Okay. We okay? Here we go. We're getting there. Don't worry, everything's just peachy. We're fine. My computer's ruined. Don't worry about it. I don't care. What do I care? Okay, here we are. Okay? And let's go back there. And the powerful other, and by the way, there's one more thing here. Actions are judged by their consequences, not their intent. Come back to me. So what he is saying is, look, Skinner is absolutely right about people at the lowest level of moral development. That's what Maslow said. Skinner's absolutely right. You can use a rat going for food as a model for humans at the lowest level of human functioning, physiological needs. But the minute you go above that, there's something distinctly uniquely human. And kids like this, they're easy to control. Do this, says the kindergarten teacher, and I'll give you a cookie. Do this, and I'll give you a star. Do this, and I'll give you do that. You don't go for recess, everything's fine. Our schools, we try to run our schools like that till kids are 18. Do what I say, I'll give you a reward. And it doesn't work so hot. There's also, actions are judged by their consequences, not by intent. Tober tells a story, okay? Here's Sally. Johnny. Johnny's mother says, Johnny, you know we have a rule in the family. Everyone has to help with the dishes. Take the dishes. Everyone takes a turn to clean dishes off the table. Yesterday your brother did it, the day before yesterday I did it, the day before yesterday your sister did it, before that you did, now it's your turn. I said, no, I don't want to do it. But it's your turn. Everybody works. We cooperate together. I don't care. Okay? I don't care. I'm not doing it. So his mother makes him do it. Finally, I'm going to stand up. You ready? He gets so angry. He gets so angry that he's walking with the last dish. He walks in the kitchen and he throws it on the floor and he smashes it. That's scenario number one. Scenario number two, Sally. Sally's mother says to her, Sally, it's time to clean the dishes. You have to do. She says, oh, yes, mother. I understand. We all take turns. Yesterday, you, the day before, my brother did. I'm going to take this. And she goes and she cooperates. She takes the dishes in and she says, I'm glad to do it. It's everybody's responsibility. And as she's walking into the kitchen, she has the last three dishes and she trips like this. The dishes go flying. She smashes them on the floor. And the three dishes break. From the point of view of morality at this stage, what does the kid say? Who did the worst thing? It's obvious. Who did the worst thing?
Sally.
How come?
She broke three. No.
Yeah, she broke three. He broke one. Nothing to choose. You can't argue with kids, right? Here's what you can't do. After I go, tell me your name one more time.
Colleen.
Colleen, I knew that. After I grabbed Colleen's pen, the teacher comes and said, how would you feel if she did that to you? I have no idea. I'm pre-operational. I'm conventional. I can't think how other people are thinking. And then, see what happened is that after I grabbed it, Harleen went out and bang, slammed me one upside the head, right? Smacked me in the head. I am absolutely convinced it's her fault. She did it, it's her fault. Because I've been told that hitting is worse than grabbing. So she did. Yeah, but you started. Yeah, but Sally had good intentions. He had bad intentions. Doesn't matter. She hit, I only grabbed. It's her fault. Yeah, but you started the whole thing. Doesn't matter. You argue with kids like this, they don't get it. You can argue if you want. Yeah, it's not my time. Okay? They just don't get it. Okay? Now, just like Piaget, Kohlberg is going to tell you that we move forward by constructing structures that are more adaptive to the environment. Higher is better. It helps us function better. So what happens at stage 2, let's go to stage 2. Okay, I'm better off. I still feel that what is moral is what is good for me, but now I have the ability to understand that others have motivations. That's cognitively higher. As I'm interacting with people, I see that they have motivations. They want what they want too. I'm not the only one. But because I'm still so egocentric, I assume that they have the same social motivations as I do. Therefore, I try to manipulate others in order to get my way. You give me what I want, and I'll give you what you want. Okay, come back to me. These are the kids that drive the kindergarten teachers and the nursery school teachers nuts. The other kids that can manipulate these kids, no. Anybody work with the little kids who was here? Yeah? How young?
I have a 5-year-old.
She has a 5-year-old, okay. So these kids will go like this. Teacher will say to everybody, everybody stand in line, we're going to walk the hall single file. And everybody will get a star. One kid says, no, I'll do it if you make me the line leader. See? You give me what I want, and I'll give you what you want. Otherwise, I'm not getting in line. It's not your turn to be the line leader. Okay, I'm not getting in line. One of my sons was pretty precocious with his moral development. He used to drive the teacher nuts. I'm going to do what I want to do. You give me my way, I'll give you your way. And you could do this was the preschool he went to had narrow halls. The kids, you couldn't have kids just running down the halls. Everything. You had to walk in lines, or it was dangerous. Okay? Adults function like this too. If you knew how much of your tax money went on this kind of moral development, anybody know what a pork barrel bill is? The last few days of Congress, people just go and throw their bills in the hopper, and everybody votes for everybody else's bill. And it's what they call pork, bringing home the bacon, some pork for your district. So the first representative throws in a bridge in my district. The next one, a road in my district. Next one, a federal building in my district. Next one, this, and they're federal funds, right? They all vote for everybody else's funds, right? You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. Where I lived in a town called Irondequoit. Hail, hail, Irondequoit, our alma mater dear. That's all I'm going to sing, okay? Now charge for concerts, I keep telling you that. And Irondequoit means where the lake turns in Iroquois Indian language. It's built on a bay called Irondequoit Bay. And that bay was a recreation facility for people who could have sailboats and powerboats. In my day, you had to be rich to be able to do that. So it was basically a recreation area for the rich. But because it was on Lake Ontario, which is a big lake, it would silt in and there'd be sandbars. So every few years, there would be federal funds out there dredging the bay. Nobody could possibly make a case that this was for the good of the general populace. Of course, these people donated a lot of money to politicians, right? Those things didn't have limits. So what would happen is whoever the representative was would throw that in, dredge the bay, and he'd vote for the person in Michigan's fix the bridge, right? What's the difference, right? Poor, I'll scratch your back, you scratch mine. I'll do this for you, you do this for me. Now, it's what Kohlberg calls, let's come in here, a market exchange morality. Okay? And he actually would call this, his name for the stage was I'll scratch your back, you scratch mine. Now come to me for a second. Now you have to understand here that there's no moral obligation in the back scratching. So let's say Colleen and I make a deal. Colleen's good in math, right, Colleen? Yeah. Colleen's good in math and I'm good in English. So I said to Colleen, you know what, every day we have a deal. I'll do your English homework, you do my math homework. But that's cheating. People at this stage, that's so irrelevant you can't even imagine. We have a deal. But then Sam comes to me and he says, you know what? If you'll do my English homework, I'll do your math and science homework. My answer to that is, where's Colleen's spec? I want to put this knife right in it, right? First I'm going to check it out. I'm going to come the next day, I'm going to tell her, Colleen, screw you, I don't care. I've got a better deal from somebody else. There's no sense of obligation that we made a deal. She's going to flunk English today? I don't care. Now, I'm sorry, at this stage, I check it out, especially if I'm high. I check it out first. Especially if I'm at this stage and I'm concrete and formal operational. Does she have a bigger brother or sister who will beat me up? Is this deal with Sam going to be permanent? Because, short-term gain. But if it's a good deal, I'm going to stab her right in the back. I don't care. Of course, Colleen doesn't really care because she was doing the same thing to me. Right? She already found someone to do her English homework, and all she had to do was give the person a candy bar day, and her parents own a candy factory, so for her it's nothing, right? She didn't even have to do double homework. To heck with it. She just went into the stash of 8 million candy bars she had. Just put one out, the heck with that, right? There's no sense of moral obligation for a deal. It's what's in it for me. People like this are very suspicious. I told you, Jane Levenger has a theory where she's expanded, and she has a similar stage. And she actually measures this not by these interviews that Kohlberg, but by having people fill out open-ended questions. I think, I am, none of your damn business. That's a quote. Okay? My problem is taking this stupid test. Those are typical answers you get from people at this stage. Leave me alone. They're very suspicious because they know they're out to get everyone else. And they think you're out to get them. I'll never forget, I saw Dan Rather at an interview. That was amazing, I know. You see all those people standing out in a storm? You know, the hurricane's coming, they're standing out and the wind's blowing in their face. What are they, idiots? You see a storm, and there's a shot, and the person is there with a wind and the rain, and it's blowing, the hurricane's coming, and right in back of the person is a building. I'm thinking to myself, why should I listen to you? Anything that you have to say, you're too stupid to go into the building, right? Bring the camera in there. The first person, I believe, to actually go and stand out in the rain was Dan Rather, right? Dan Rather liked dangerous stuff and going on and tread before. So he actually went into a neighborhood and interviewed a gang of what we used to call in those days juvenile delinquents. He was a young man then, right? A gang of kids. And when he was talking to them, they made their money basically by mugging old ladies, right? And they did because, you know, old ladies didn't fight back and it was easy. And finally he said, why are you doing it? And the kid said, well, I can mug the old lady, get to money, I can get away with it. He said, if you could do it, you would too. And Dan Rather got shocked. You could see the look on his face. He said, no, I wouldn't. Right? He lost the school. Kid said, said some curse word. Bang, bang, BS. He said, sure you would. What are you talking about? I said, no, honest. You know, the kid had him going. He said, sure you would. If you thought you could get away with it, you'd do it every time. Kid doesn't get it, right? So there's really no sense of morality here, no sense of pigeon drops, you know, that con men. You know, let's say con men, con persons, right? Work like this. That's where they're coming from. What's in it for me? What can I get? And what they're doing, you see, is they're assuming you're as greedy as I am, so I'm going to offer you a deal that plays to your greed. And then I'm going to get you, right? Because I don't care about you. How many people get those emails I'm the son of a judge from some country or other. Usually it's a country in trouble. You have them, and what does it say? Push it down, push it down, push it down.
Usually it's like from some country in Africa.
And usually in Africa because there's always trouble there. Yeah.
You know, put 5, 10 million in your bank account, you got to give me your credit card number, and I get over there, we can meet. And
Right, exactly. That's it. It's usually some country that has trouble. And I have these funds, and my father was the judge or the president got kicked out. Just give me your bank account number, your credit card number, and then I'll transfer it all into your bank account, and then I'll give you 10%. Well, 10% of $6 million, $600,000. Then, of course, your bank account's empty. You go ahead.
These are on emails. Who would fall for that?
That's a good question. They keep sending them. I get 2 a week. I swear to you. It's constant. Just constant I get those. Or these things about, oh, drugs for free, right? Get all these pain drugs. They cost $40 a pill, 25 cents. What do you think you're going to get in the mail, right? Some sugar? I don't know. You know, it's just so, this is it. What do I care? Greed, playing on greed. Interestingly enough, I'll tell you a stage 1 story. When I first got to Houston, when I first got here in the 70s, there was somebody who ran into a U-totem. If you remember what a U-totem is, you're old. Got you guys, huh? A U-totem is like a Circle K. And he killed a guy and stole some beer. And this is how the story came out, because he told it later. He walked into the store, it was halftime of the football game, and he saw he didn't have enough beer to get him through the second half. So he goes in there and he takes out the beer that he likes. This is the story he told. And he puts the money on the counter. The guy said, you don't have enough money for this brand of beer. He said, well, that's all the money I have. He said, well, you can get a cheaper brand. He said, I don't want a cheaper brand. He said, well, you don't have enough money for this beer. So he took out a gun and shot the guy in the head and killed him. Didn't even rob the till. Didn't rob the cash register. Walked out. There were witnesses, too. And they saw what building he went into. So they went into the building. The witnesses called the police, obviously, went into the building. And they found him. You know, they just went to all the apartments. And they found the guy sitting there drinking the beer, watching the game. He just wanted what he wanted. That's enough. So this is a friend of mine. His son went to get gas at one of these places, walks in to pay. This was before they had the thing you slide in and out. Walks in to pay. There was nobody there. So he goes to the back to look for the owner, and the owner's there with 2 of the customers, or 3 other customers, being held up. And apparently when he went in, he startled the guy, so he turned around, the guy shot him in the head. And he shot all the other people and stole the money, but then he threw them all in the freezer, to store a big freezer. That's what saved their lives. They didn't bleed to death. All right? And this kid, interesting enough, I know him. I mean, he's married now, and he has a family. He limps badly, but he recovered all his cognitive function. Finished graduate school, he did okay. His father told me he can't multiply anymore, but he recovered it all. I said, just hang in there, Billy, it'll be okay. Because when he tries me a few of the symptoms, I went and talked to a guy I know about brain, right? When they asked the guy if he was sorry, they caught him eventually. And he was identified by a couple of people who lived because they were in the freezer. He said, yeah. He said, what I'm sorry about is I didn't make sure they were dead, so they couldn't identify me. That's stage 1 reasoning, okay? Now, some people have said, what's wrong with stage 2 reasoning? What's wrong with stage 2 reasoning? Right? You could live that way forever. Why would you have to go on? And Kohlberg's answer is, yeah, that's true. Certain people can live that way, provided the rest of us don't. Because you can't run a society on, I'll scratch your back, you scratch mine, and I'm going to stab you in the back if I get a deal with someone else. So he and I make a deal, and he and I make a deal, 2 of them make a deal, and she and I, and then the 3 of them. We're always making deals. And meanwhile, the deal I'm making with her means that I got to take this one and stab him in the back. Say, the hell with that deal. Of course, meanwhile, he's made a deal that gets me. Everybody's out watching out for her. Today's her day, right? Her own things, watching who I am, what am I going to do? Watch out, be careful. Don't trust anybody, and rightly so. You can't function that way. Every time you do something, you never know if it's going to be good tomorrow because somebody might be out to get you. The rest of us can't function that way. You can't run a society that way. Certain people who we call antisocial, right? And by the way, let me tell you that when Kohlberg actually did work in prisons, the large majority of people in prisons function at this level. Not all, but a lot of people in prison function at this level. Okay, so what Kohlberg does, yeah, go ahead.
Is that why that show Survivor was so big?
Yeah, it could be. It's a good question. I never watched Survivor. I want you to know, when we get invaded from outer space, they're going to ask who watched Survivor. Those who watch Survivor are going to be eliminated as an unintelligent form of life. And those who, I know, I take it back. It's just not for me. I don't even know what it's about. I don't like it. But no, when people gang up and they make deals, I don't know. I haven't watched it. May not be. You can get some horrible things happening at other levels of morality too. So, go ahead.
That's also the kind of same thing as that, like the mob and stuff like The Sopranos and.
No, that's not true. The Sopranos are at a higher level. The Sopranos have their code of morality. Yeah, they do.
Okay.
It's not. We'll see that bad things can happen. Conventional reasoning. Let's look at conventional reasoning. You say the Sopranos really are not at that level. Okay. That one I watch. Okay, this tape is going to run in 5 years, people are not going to talk about, but gangs don't work that way. Okay, let's go to the PowerPoint. Conventional reasoning says at this level, the person develops an ability to understand both interpersonal reciprocity, right, and rules and norms that apply to all. Interpersonal reciprocity says, look, I won't burn down your house, you don't burn down. Come back to me. Okay, I don't burn down your house, you don't burn down mine. Okay, we'll make some rules and we'll stick to them, everybody will agree to them. I know how it would feel if you grab the pen from me, so I won't grab the pen from you, you don't grab it from me. Okay? That's interpersonal, because I understand that, and I understand that there are rules and norms applied to all, and I agree to live by them. Okay? So come back and look at this. So what is moral is what's normative at his stage 3 here. And at stage 4, it's what is legal. And what happens is that rules and laws are now more important than individual desires. Okay? So stage 3 morality consists of following the rules and norms of the group. Those who do not follow them or cannot meet group standards are considered to be evil or bad and not worthy of respect. Okay, so come back to me, right? Okay, look, norms are not laws, but they're rules everybody follows. For instance, this is being filmed during the fall semester. When the semester started, it was hot. Okay, nobody came to this class in a bathing suit. Okay, because you just don't do it. You just don't do it. Okay, ready? Here I am. I'm in the restaurant, and I'm going into the black-eyed pea, and I order meatloaf, mashed potatoes with gravy. So the first thing I have to do is mix up the mashed potatoes into gravy, right? I take the meatloaf in this hand, I stick my fingers in the mashed potato gravy, right? Stick my finger. Who's getting, what do they say, grossed out already? Disgusting, right? And I'm not even really doing it, okay? But nobody does that. You don't do it. Okay, now different societies have different norms, right? Did we talk about the salt shakers with the 1 hole and the 3 holes on the top? I know what you all do. You buy the shakers, right? You guys set like that. You put the pepper in the 1 hole and the salt in the one with the other 3 holes, right? Wrong. Wrong. It shows, what was that called? A colonial. It shows you're a colonial. You're a barbarian. You see, in finer British society, you do not shake the salt. You pour a little pile of salt out of the 1 hole and you dip. You take your fork and you dip. Except it's with your left hand. You're cutting and eating. You dip. You see, you dip. One time I go to England. One of my graduate students was from England. She sets me up with people here, to show me around, her friends. And the last night, there's 2 or 3 of them there, I think it was 3 of them, I said, come on, I'll take you out to a nice restaurant. Went to a nice, and they weren't all necessarily from ritzy backgrounds, but they were all students. One wasn't, businessman, had his own business. They were all from that upper crust or had aspirations. They all spoke Queen's English, right? And I go there and I order a meal, and I take it and I start to shake the salt. One of them turns around and she says, an American. She wanted them to know that she did not associate with British barbarians, right? You know, you have to, he's an American, so we can forgive him. You know, these primitive colonials, what do they know? I had another incident there. We went out for fish and chips. That's fish and French fries. French fries are chips, and potato chips are called crisps. And then we're going to the theater. Oh, London theater is wonderful stuff. Ooh, it's on par with Broadway. It's just wonderful. If you've never been to Broadway, you ought to go take a look. It's just great stuff. Great stuff. Okay. Anyway, I wanted to see it. So I'm looking at my watch, and we're maybe a little behind. So I said to them, could we finish and by the way, you don't put ketchup on the chips, or else you're a primitive colonial again. You put a vinegar. If you ask for ketchup, they give you a look like you're still not civilized over there, right? So you put vinegar on. So I said to them, now they were really coming down in class because fish and chips was for the average folk. I said, maybe we could finish the fish here and take the chips and eat them on the way to the theater. They gave me a look. So finally, later, I asked the guy whose house I was staying, I said, what happened? He said, in his British accent, of course, he said, you might as well have said, well, could we go to the theater, could we take our clothes off and run through the streets naked to cut down on the air friction so we'll get there faster? He said, it's just disgusting to eat in the street. Disgusting for people, you know, for adults, for that level of society. And that's just sort of agreed upon rules. There's no law against it. We have rules we all agree upon. Now, of course, what happens, and by the way, many, many adolescents are at this stage, okay? Many adolescents, okay? You do what the group says. And you, in the group, and you do, okay? I'll give you an example. My son was 15, and he had to have a Vans. Vans are shoes that are made out of a piece of canvas with a piece of rubber, and at that time they were only black and white checks. They're still now they have multiple colors, right? Everybody's wearing Vans. I have to wear Vans to be part of the group. I said, okay, we'll go get you some Vans. What am I going to do? Give the kid a trauma? So we go to Westwood Mall of beloved memory, okay? And we go into the Foot Locker, and there are Vans, I don't know, $79, $60, $50. That was a while ago, though. I look over my shoulder, and there's, I think, either Tom McCann or Kinney's. Tom McCann, I think it was. On the other side, go look, $29.95, same shoe. So I go into the Foot Locker. I left him there. He's 15. He can stay in the Foot Locker himself. I come back and say, come here, I want to show you something. I take him over. I take him to the window. Before I could say anything, just like this, he goes, in this tone of voice, no! People looked like I was, had a hot poker under his fingernails or something. He said, they're not real Vans. I said, how's anybody going to know? He said, no. Vans, they have the tag on the outside, that little white tag on the outside. And it doesn't say Vans on the, Tom McCann's own brand. It says something else. I said, what are people going to do, bend down and look at your foot? It's the same shoe. They'll see during gym, no, it's got to be Vans. You think I paid 3 times as much for the Vans? Of course. What am I going to do? Have to give the kid a psychosis at age 15? I mean, he just was horrifying to him. You have to wear Vans. You have to belong. You all remember pretending to like things you didn't like when you were in high school because everybody did? I went to middle school and high school during the Elvis years. Elvis, all the girls would go, all the boys, we had to pretend they didn't like him, right? Years later, a friend of mine told me, we were in our 40s. She said, I always hated Elvis. Never saw anything in him. I said, you were screaming with everyone else. She said, of course, what am I going to do? Pretend not to belong? Anybody here remember that? Pretending to like a sports you didn't like, the guy, or something like that? Anybody remember that? Yeah. Pretending all kinds of things so you'd fit in. Part of the group. Okay? This is part of it. And, by the way, let's go here. Let's go back to the PowerPoint. Often, a powerful leader may determine what's considered to be moral. What do we have that when a powerful leader considers what's to be moral, everybody goes along with what the leader says? What do we call that? Push it down?
I'm not sure if I'm right. Oligarchy?
No, it's just a small group. An oligarchy has levels. An oligarchy has levels. This is a cult. Okay? Let me tell you a story about a cult. You may not know this. There was a guy named Johnson. Jim Johnson? Anybody know about the mass suicide murders in Guyana? What? Jones. I knew it didn't hit right. Jim Jones. Thank you, in Guyana. He had this group, he had a cult, basically, a following. In California, he got in trouble with the government, so he went to Guyana, which used to be British Guyana, and they spoke English there, and he got them to give him, it's in South America, and it used to be a British colony, so it's the language is English, and he went there, and he made a deal with them to give his group some land out in the jungle there. Right, it's pretty, and they cleared the compound, they had land there, and then he began to get into more trouble and money, and the FBI was still after him, and they were going to extradite all kinds of stuff. So one day he mixes up this giant batch of poison Kool-Aid, and he tells the followers, and they knew it was poison, take it, give it to your children to drink, and then drink it yourself. And they all did. Scratch the statement. Many of them did. A few said, this is it. I'm out of this cult. And they ran into the jungle. Okay, but many of them did. They killed their children and themselves. Hundreds of people died. I think he shot himself, though. I'm not sure, but he killed himself, too. You know? He shot himself, right? Yeah, he shot himself. Cult following, leading, okay? Because whatever the powerful other says. By the way, back to Maslow, a sense of love and belonging. Cults feed off of that. You belong no matter what. Go ahead, you want to say something? Koresh, the same thing. You'll notice, by the way, you can say this from both theories. All theories saw this. People have this need to belong to something. Often these cults pick up people who feel lost. Nobody loves me, nobody wants me, so they bring them in, right? And what happens here is that you're in or you're out. Speaking of Broadway musicals, West Side Story, when you're a jet all the way from your first cigarette to your last dying day. Okay, this is the Jets. So the two gangs, the Jets and the Sharks. The Sharks are Puerto Ricans. The Jets, they're nondescript, but they're supposed to be obviously Polish and Irish kids, Polish, Irish, and Italian kids. Okay, so this is the Jets, right? Right? So there's a way to get in. Your first cigarette. When you're a jet, I'm allowed to say this because it's in the song, and the shit hits the fan. You've got brothers around. You're a family man. You're never alone. You're never disconnected. You're home with your own. When company's expected, danger. You're well protected. And then there's one line in there, and every Puerto Rican's a lousy chicken, right? That's the other. The Puerto Rican gang is the other, and of course it's one of the Jets, or he's an ex that falls in love with the sister of the leader of the Puerto Rican gang, and they don't know what to do. There's a place for us somewhere. Of course, it ends in tragedy. They both die. Okay, but that's the whole story. It's a Romeo and Juliet story. Oh, that music's great. That's the top of Broadway musicals. Better than Oklahoma, I agree. Okay? So, and it's the only one that ends sadly. So, I saw it the other day in the movie. I started to cry. What can I tell you? What is it? Good stuff. Anyway, That's the typical thing. You're in, you're part, you're the gang. But if you're not one of us, if you're a Puerto Rican can't come and say, I want to be part of this gang. No, the Puerto Ricans are over there. Okay? And so what we get from this, let's go here, is stereotyping. And disagreements are settled. We have no way to settle it. I'm in, I'm good. You're out, you're bad. By attacking or shunning the nonconformer, and by intergroup conflict. Go ahead.
I have a question. How does this, if at all, relate to, do you think, like American foreign policy?
That's a good question. All right. I was going to talk about that later, but let's talk about it now. Come back to me. Okay? You'll notice foreign policy, most people say, works on pre-conventional. What's in it for my country? The heck with everybody else, right? I'll make the deal if it's good for me, if it's not, not good for me. But that's not altogether true. We notice that there are groups, the Arab League, the Organization of American States, Organization of African, something, the African Union, right? They're in it together, right? We feel some sort of a bond. NATO, we feel a certain kind of a bond. Okay. If you look at NATO, what's the one country that seems to, that's from the point of view of culture, is the oddball country in NATO? Say it again.
Turkey.
Why?
Religion.
Push it down.
Because they're Muslims.
They're Muslims, right? Interesting enough, Turkey has a long history of secular forces from Ataturk taking over the country, allowing religion, but not wanting religious groups to control the country. And every time strong religious groups would control the country, the army would come in and throw them out. But it's still strange, okay? Turkey and Greece have been fighting for centuries, okay? But they're both in NATO, and that actually, they haven't really had a war. There was grounds for a war over Cyprus. The Turks and the Greeks in Cyprus were fighting with each other, and there was one time the Turkish army went in there. But NATO moved in, and whatever the deal the Turks had set up, they made it seemed to be okay. We're in this together. NATO, to some extent, is against communism, but when you get these kinds of things by religion, right, or by geography, right, people seem to do. Woodrow Wilson practically admitted, look, during World War I, the United States was trying to stay neutral. We hear the stories about the sinking of the Lusitania and all this kind of stuff that got people ticked off at the Germans. But the British did terrible stuff too. They would constantly board American ships and take off all the goods because they were heading for Germany or Austria. Wilson once threatened to declare war on them if they did it again. In the end, though, he said he was an Anglophile. He loved British culture and British stuff. He had actually been in Britain for a while. He had a high blood pressure attack when he was a young man, and he went to Britain to recuperate. That was before, oh, take this pill, you're okay, right? And he admitted he was an Anglophile. He couldn't see going to work. He had a sense of identity, both English-speaking countries. So there is that in foreign policy. There is that in foreign policy. And I will tell you, once I got a lecture from an Israeli diplomat, he said, we're the only country in the world that no one else has our religion, no one else speaks our language. We're an odd man out. That's why we have a lot of problems. No one naturally identifies with us, right? So he, you know, this is a diplomat, realpolitik. So there is a lot of that. What's going on? Even in prisons, gangs, prison gangs. Okay? This causes stereotypes, and every Puerto Rican is a lousy chicken. They're all no good, we're all good. If you're a jet, you're great. If you're a shark, you stink. And of course the implication was if you heard the dialogue, the sharks felt the same way. Okay? So there's this, and the only way to solve intergroup conflicts is by wars. Gangs are classic stage 3. I'm a this, you're a that. Gangs, classic stage 3. How do gangs settle disputes? They have gang wars. Okay? And the Hatfields and the McCoys, you all know about that? 2 clans in the hills of West Virginia, Kentucky, Arkansas? Tennessee, somewhere in there, right?
It's West Virginia.
I think it was West Virginia.
Yeah, the Appalachian Mountains.
Say it again?
The Appalachian Mountains.
The Appalachians. I think it was the Appalachians. But you're right, there were gang wars in the Ozarks too, where they just fought each other. You're a this, I'm a that. They fought each other endlessly. Because you're a this and I'm a that. You're good, I'm no good. I mean, you're no good, I'm great. Yeah, go ahead.
But I was going to say the interesting thing about that is that most of them were all inbred. So it was sort of like
Push it down.
inbred family versus another inbred.
Yeah, well, because you wouldn't marry a Hatfield or you wouldn't marry a McCoy. That's where this thing, the real McCoy, came from. You're a real McCoy, you're not a Hatfield. You know, away from. I believe that's where it came from. Don't hold me to that. Okay? Now, this can work fine. And of course, I must tell you, this is one of the things, a lot of what is called multiculturalism and multicultural understanding reflects this kind of thinking. You'll have to excuse me. You already gathered I'm not the most politically correct person in the world, right? Oh, Mexicans are like this, and blacks are like that, and Hispanics are like this, and whites are like that. Please. I heard one guy say, well, Euro-Americans have a linear sense of time. Third world people don't. They think of time holistically, and they're not so hung up on time and the way times are. Gee, really? They run Brazil without anybody having a sense of time? Gee, I wonder how they do that. Really? That's how they run China, no sense of time at all? I mean, it's just such bigoted stereotyping. It's all the bigotry stood on their head. Third world people, this is out of a book by Henderson called Multiculturalism in the Workplace, something like that. Euro-Americans are very rational, linear, and scientific. Third world peoples think holistically and often in circular reasoning. Oh, really? There are no logical people in the whole third world. No logical people in Brazil. No great scientists in Japan or in Peru. What are you talking about? What kind of nonsense, bigoted nonsense is this? Oh, third world people respect family. Euro-Americans don't. Really? What kind of, I mean, it's just sickening. I mean, I told you about the Chinese student who came to me, didn't I? She said, I'm terrible in math. It's the same thing. That's stage 3 stuff, stereotyping people. Now, of course, what happens, it's okay if you have a small group and everybody agrees on everything. But what happens if not? One day, I got to tell you one more story. I'm in the office. This was a long time ago when I first got here. It was so long ago that Iran and Israel were getting along, right? Before Khomeini came in, Iran and Israel had fairly close relationships. There was a student there from Iran who had just come. It was December, the end of November, December, and he had just come here, right, to study. And he was talking to this Israeli student who had been here, I think this was his second or third year. And they're talking, and they're in the front office of the old FED department, and they're talking, I'll never forget this, they're talking about Christmas. And about, you don't realize it if you live here. It's just amazing things happen at Christmas. All of a sudden, lights everywhere, trees everywhere, carols, everything. You go to the skating rink, there's a 75-foot tree standing there, and the buildings are lit up. It's just spectacular and amazing. You live here, you don't think about it. Come from someplace else. I remember when I came back from Israel, it hit me again. I said, wow, I've forgotten what it was like. It's really something special. Yeah, you get used to it. See, if you were self-actualizing every year, you would have a fresh experience, right? So they're talking about it. Wow, it's tremendous, and seen it, et cetera, you know. All of a sudden, the secretary from some small town somewhere, I can't remember, all of a sudden history said, you guys don't celebrate Christmas? Right, one was Jewish, one was Muslim, right, obviously. So they both looked at her and said, no. So she says, but everybody celebrates Christmas. They looked at it, they didn't know what to say. So the Iranian guy, at that time there were plenty of Christians in Iran, right? It's now after the Ayatollah took over, there are many less. But this guy was not from Tehran, he was from some smaller place. He said, gee, I barely knew what Christmas was when I was growing up, right? And in Israel, obviously, you celebrate Christmas, right? Because this is, you know, it's a lot of Christian pilgrims come, but I'll tell you, I said, I'm going to the Church of Nativity, which is in Bethlehem, right? I said, I'm going there on Christmas. I want to see it. That's where Jesus was born. Right? Then they get on the radio in Hebrew and in Arabic. I understand. I want to listen to Hebrew. If you're a Jew or a Muslim, please don't go to the Church of Nativity. Please stay out of Jerusalem on Christmas. Tens of thousands of people, because there's not enough room for everybody. Tens of thousands of people are coming from all over the world. If you go and stand in the Church of the Nativity, you're taking a place of a Christian pilgrim who has come all this way to make this spiritual journey. And out of your curiosity, I mean, they just lay the guilt trips on you, right? So I didn't go. Finally, they had the brains to broadcast it on television. But if you live in Tel Aviv, where 99-point-something% of the city is Jewish, Christmas comes, you don't even think about it. She couldn't get it. But it's so beautiful. I mean, it's a wonderful holiday. So they look at, well, we have our own holidays. I mean, they didn't know what to tell her, right? Well, where she was, it was okay because everybody did celebrate Christmas. Everybody did it this way. Everybody wore Vans. Everybody, et cetera, right? Whatever. But once you get in a society where things are different, where you have different people with different content, and you have to remember, by the way, that sometimes the standards that are required to join the group are either put impossible demands on you, like you have to celebrate Christmas, you have to be a Christian, or like the Klan, you have to be white. Well, there's some people, no matter what they do, they can't fulfill the standards to join the Klan, right? It's gone, right? They can't. But that's okay, because we're good, and all of those people who can't fulfill the standards are bad. They're evil, right? And if you hear these bigots talk, the things they say about black people and about Hispanics, I mean, they really believe this stuff, this bigoted, it's disgusting stuff. So, of course, if you're in one of those groups, if you have half a brain, you get in your own group. I got to defend myself against these people. Well, it's hard to run a society that way. What are you going to do when people just don't agree on the standards? So the answer is, let's go, is stage 4 reasoning. Okay? Let me say one more thing about stage 3. Stage 4 reason, let me say this. Morality consists of following the law and abiding by legal agreements. There's an understanding of contractual obligations. Come back to me for a second. You have to understand that at stage 3, groups make a difference. So I go and make a deal with George. Okay? We have a contract, we're in business, and then I found out he's one of them, whatever them is. He's the wrong religious group or the wrong ethnic group. Or his last name is Hatfield. His last name is Jones, but his mother's a Hatfield. And my last name is Smith, but my mother's a McCoy. The deal's off. Get away from me. You're no good. I don't have to abide by this, right? It's personal. It's all personal. The rules are personal. So at stage 4, let's go back, it becomes impersonal. Now it's a contractual obligation, and disagreements are settled by going to court, okay? And following proper legal procedures is the fundamental part of morality. Come back to me. Now I don't have agreed upon standards. I have laws. Laws, okay? You'll notice that Kohlberg, if you remember, calls this, wait a second. He calls this, okay, let's go back to this for 1 second. Law and order reasoning. Remember? It's law and order reasoning. See, this is, conventional reasoning is group norms. But this stage 4 conventional reasoning is law and order reasoning. Okay? Okay, so come back to me. And so I understand that there are laws to follow, there are rules to follow. They are impersonal. They are impersonal. So if I find out that George is one of them, and by the way, he doesn't like anybody because he's found out that I'm one of them, right? He's a Hatfield, I'm a McCoy or whatever. It doesn't matter. We have a contract, a deal's a deal. Or if I find out tomorrow, hey, I can get a better deal over there, I'll just stick it to him, like stage 2. A deal's a deal. You have a contract, you have a contract. Of course, contracts are mutually agreed, what we have in school. Here's a contract. Do this if you're going to go on the trip. Do this, do this, do this, do this, do this. If you violate any one of these rules, you're out of here. You can't go, and you and your parents have to sign. Nobody can say, wait, the kid can say, wait a minute, I want to negotiate Rule 3. Right? You can't do that. That's not a contract. A contract is mutually agreed upon. If I come to you and say, sign this, I'm going to blow your brains out, that's not a legal contract. By the way, you can get out of that's what I was on one jury in my life, and the guy tried to get out of a contract by saying that he was forced, it was under duress that he signed it. That's grounds for doing it. It wasn't. But in any case, he just changed his mind. But that's the key. You have a contract, it's legal. And so, what is the great document in Western history that says these are the rules? Western religious history. Do this, do that, do this, do that, do that, do this, do this, do that. Don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, and don't do that. What? The Ten Commandments. Now, the last few minutes, which commandment, we're going to have to do a little inference and deductive read, a little inference here, makes it clear that disputes are going to be settled by going to court.
Is it, you shall obey the Lord your God?
No, court.
But if you
You can't talk with your hands. You're going to talk with one hand.
if you look at obeying a higher power,
It says you should love the Lord your God. But court. It says court. Go ahead.
Covet thy neighbor.
How's that a court? Shouldn't covet your neighbor. That's true. That tells you. That's the only one you couldn't do. I don't know if you're coveting or not. Don't bear false witness. Where are you going to be a witness? In your closet? You notice it's the last one before coveting. I think it's the ninth. Jews and Christians number them differently. But in other words, all of this other stuff is not going to work. So it doesn't matter if I go to court and Colleen, right, is my cousin. Tell me your name again. Heather. And Heather, I don't know from Adam. So I'm going to lie. I saw what happened. They're having a dispute. They went to court. And people asked me what happened, right? I live across the street. Did Colleen run over Heather's lawn or not with her car? That's the first question. I'm going to say no because she's my cousin. Stage 3. I don't know what this person has been. Stage 4, I'm going to tell the truth. You have to tell the truth. As a matter of fact, in Leviticus later it tells the judges, when it's sort of recapitulating this, chapter 20 I think, if you're a judge, don't favor the rich because they're powerful or favor the poor because you feel sorry for them. Write down justice is blind. That's the American symbol of justice. You go by the laws. It's not personal. That's what we used to say, we're a government of laws, not of men. Now we have to say of people. Doesn't matter if it's my cousin. Doesn't matter if this is the law. We just had a president impeached, right? Not too long ago. The president is not above a law. One of the big differences between the Ten Commandments and the Hammurabic Code is the Hammurabic Code, the king is above the law. The law doesn't apply to the king. In the Ten Commandments, the king is also above the law, but the king is God. So to forget that. All people, the king of the land, the king of the law applies to the king too. Applies to him too. Right? And so this is a rule of laws and rules, and now I can settle disputes. Okay? And I follow the precepts of morality. Okay? And that's how it works. And this, by the way, is not a bad way to run society. The problem is, what if the law stinks? What if the law says you're required to help officers return runaway slaves? What if the law says these people have to sit in this place in the bus, and these people have to sit in that place in the bus. Here's a swimming pool paid for by taxes, but if you look a certain way, if you're black, you can't swim in a public swimming pool. That was in Illinois, by the way. So that becomes the question. But first, we're going to finish this idea of the law and what happens with the law, and how it looks. And then we're going on a post-conventional morality, and we're going to see once again that the person is going to be first. But now we're going to have to appeal not to just what's good for me, but to certain principles to which the law must adhere. Okay, I'll see you next week.